Hey crew, it's Pitt and I'm back with some more Esoterica. Today we are diving back into the works of Mr. Charles Haanel. This is the Master Key System Part 16. We are reading aloud and discussing as we go along the various points that are brought to light by the text. It's not the format for everyone, but some people seem to find enjoyment in it, so you are more than welcome to tag along as we continue our exploration. Before we begin, however, if you are unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time I lose you in the terminology, there will be several playlists linked in the corner above, in the box below, along with the original source material so that you can get a better understanding of who I am and why I say the things that I do. With that being said, let us dive in and continue our exploration with the Master Key System, Part 16. This part explains the nature of wealth. It shows how it is created and upon what it depends. Wealth is not just money. That is an important thing to note right off the top of this. Many people make the erroneous assumption that it is indeed only money, but it is not. You can be wealthy in a myriad of ways. Some of them include love and affection. Some of them include companionship. You can be wealthy, and it is not just describing monetary compensation. It shows why success is contingent upon an ideal higher than the mere accumulation of riches. It shows that success depends upon creative ability and explains the necessary condition for attainment. It explains why premature wealth is but the forerunner of humiliation and disaster. It explains the methods by which we may take our fate out of the hands of chance and consciously make for ourselves the conditions which we desire. It tells how we may compel success by the utilization of scientific and exact methods. And it explains that while we have the ability to create harmonious and constructive conditions, we also have the ability to create inharmonious and destructive conditions. And unfortunately, through ignorance of the law, this is what many are doing. Introduction, Part 16. The vibratory activities of the planetary universe are governed by a law of periodicity. Everything that lives has periods of birth, growth, fruition, and decline. These periods are governed by the septimal law. The law of sevens governs the day of the week, the phases of the moon, the harmonies of sound, light, heat, electricity, magnetism, and atomic structure. That is not true. The law is 8, not 7. 7 is a bastardization of the law. It is something that happened according to a book, and it has been something that has worked effectively at containing a very fundamental truth about the existence of everything. Everything is a fundamental harmonic, and the harmonic is resting upon the periodicity of 8, not 7. There is a very good reason to believe this. You should fall back and check out the fundamental harmonics of life and the 8 laws of creation, and they will give you a better understanding of that. We may dive into it more as we go along here, but the pattern is always 8. It is never 7. The 7 is only acceptable that the 8th is the beginning of the new pattern, right? The closing of the harmonic. You go from C to C on the scale. There are 8 steps, and the 8th being the beginning of the new pattern repeating. It governs the life of individuals and of nations, and it dominates the activities of the commercial world. Like this law of sevens, that is part of the control system. It is laid out in the genesis of one of the control systems, and it has been assimilated into several of the other control systems, and it is used throughout the entirety of our lives. But 8 really does work better. Life is growth, and growth is change. Each 7-year period takes us into a new cycle, which would be the 8th. The first 7 years is the period of infancy. No. The next 7 is the period of childhood, representing the beginning of individual responsibility. All right, so straight off the top, you are not an infant at 6 years old. You are not an infant at 5 years old. You are not an infant at 4 years old. You are not an infant at 3 years old. You can make the argument that the toddler stage at 2, which is still kind of pushing it, but no, you are not an infant up until 7 years old. You are in your formative years up until the 8th year. Most of your trials in life have been set by the 8th year. Your MBTI pattern has been firmly established for the most part by your 8th year. These are things that are true, at least in my estimation, through the things that I have researched and the effort that I have expended. But you are definitely not an infant at 7 years old. That is simply not a thing. The 8 years of your formative years, the 8 years of your growth, and the 8 years of your beginning your adulthood period, which will bring you, 8, 16, 24. That is true, right? There are patterns in life. They do happen, but they are on the scale of 8, not 7. That is important, and I feel like I'm going to be hammering that all the way through this. So if you're not down for that, it's probably not going to be your study. The next 7, the period of childhood, representing the beginning of individual responsibility. The next 7 represents the period of adolescence. The 4th period marks the attainment of full growth. So that would be 28. The 5th period is the constructive period, when men begin to acquire property, possessions, a home, and family. The next, from 35 to 42, is a period of reactions and changes. And this, in turn, is followed by a period of reconstruction, adjustment, and recuperation, so as to be ready for a new cycle of 7s, beginning with the 50th year. And once again, I vehemently disagree with this periodicity, right? The period of formative is 8. And then the next period is the period of growth and the learning of responsibility that brings you up to 16. Then the next period is the assumption of the manhood or womanhood, as the case may be. And that brings you up until 24, right? And then you get the period of responsibility, which begins at 25 and continues on. So there is a repeating pattern, and it is fairly consistent. There are variations, but it's fairly consistent on the 8 level mark, not on the 7. There are many who think that the world is just about to pass out of the 6th period, that it will soon enter into the 7th period, the period of readjustment, reconstruction, and harmony, the period which is frequently referred to as the millennium. Now, we are in that particular period of time which he is talking about. If you were unaware, he was in 1917. We're in 2024 right now. Soon to be 2025, so we are well into the millennium. And so there is an argument that can be made about the growth of humanity throughout various periods since the last reset. You should check that out. We are indeed probably in the 7th millennium, but it is about to be into the next. Now, millennium, as I am using it here, is not the same as the 1,000 year period that he is describing. This is, in their estimation, right, the way that the control system works is that it has convinced everybody that 4,000 years prior to the birth of Christ was the beginning of the world. That is simply not true. The world has existed prior to that, and it will exist on the other side. But there is a bottleneck coming. The 12,000 year disaster cycle can give you a better understanding of that. But if you hold that the Earth is only 6,000, about to be 7,000 years old, then this makes sense, but it is not true, right? Humanity extends well past 4,000 years ago, or 6,000 years ago, and so it is simply prima facie not correct, right? On the face,
not true. I do believe that we are about to enter a new period, a new harmonic, right? We are rising to the end of the one and about to begin the new one. So the 7 into the 8 is there. But our record keeping may not be entirely correct. The numbers that we use were kind of arbitrarily created at a certain point in our history. And then all of our calendars changed in a variety of ways. And so there are problems. Now, there is significant reason to believe that once upon a time, the year was 360 days instead of 365 and a quarter. And that breaks down into 8 a lot better. And there was a period in time where they decided that 7 days a week instead of 8 was going to be the thing. There is reason for that, and they are all tied into the control systems for a variety of reasons. Those familiar with these cycles will not be disturbed when things seem to go wrong, but can apply the principle outlined in the Master Key with the full assurance that a higher law will invariably control all other laws, and that through an understanding and conscious operation of spiritual laws, we can convert every seeming difficulty into a blessing. Part 16.
Wealth is a product of labor. Capital is an effect, not a cause, a servant, not a master, a means, not an end.
And again, wealth and capital are not necessarily the same thing, right? The physical money that you hold can be construed as wealth, but other things can be wealth as well.
The most commonly accepted definition of wealth is that it consists of all useful and agreeable things which possess exchange value. It is this exchange value which is the predominant characteristic of wealth.
Love is an exchange, right? There is no love without love returned. That is a thing. Wrath is love unreturned. That is a thing. So, yes, kind of. But I'm going to quit hammering the point that wealth is not just money after this. But it is important to remember the value of all useful and agreeable things which possess exchange value. Even friendship is an exchange of value. It is the sharpening of another person with yourself and yourself with another person. That is friendship. That is relationship with your spouse. That is something that is an equal exchange. So yes, kind of.
When we
When we consider the small addition made by wealth to the happiness of the possessor, we find that the true value consists not in its utility, but in its exchange value. This exchange value made it a medium for securing the things of real value whereby our ideals may be realized. Wealth should never then be desired as an end, but simply as a means of accomplishing an end. We have hammered that all the way through this. Success is contingent upon a higher ideal than the mere accumulation of riches, and he who aspires to such success must formulate an ideal for which he is willing to strive. With such an ideal in mind, the ways and means can and will be provided, but the mistake must not be made of substituting the means for the end. There must be a definite, fixed purpose, an ideal. Prentice Mulford said, "The man of success is the man possessed of the greatest spiritual understanding, and every great fortune comes of superior and truly spiritual power." Unfortunately, there are those who fail to recognize this power. They forget that Andrew Carnegie's mother had to help support the family when they went to America. That Harriman's father was a poor clergyman with a salary of only $200 a year. That Sir Thomas Lipton started with only 1 shilling. These men had no other power to depend upon, but it did not fail them. It is important to note, right? Monetary success does not mean correct alignment. It does not mean that you are even within your own correct alignment, much less the correct alignment of society writ large. The timber barons of this particular period of time built their fortune upon the exploitation of their labor. That is true of the fabric magnates. That is true of the petroleum tycoons, right? All of these people accumulated great wealth, but most of them were not acting in accordance with any of the laws of creation. And that can seem like a conundrum, but you must bear in mind this important fact. Not all blessings come from God. Sometimes you can be monetarily compensated for service in not accordance with the greater good. One whole group of people, for instance, made a contract using blood. They sealed it in 3 different ways in order to accumulate wealth throughout the ages. They made that deal with an entity, and that entity required certain things from them, up to and including sacrifice of life, the spilling of great magnitudes of blood, up to and including human blood. They were rewarded with a kingdom. It did not last very long, but they had it. Not every blessing comes from the source, right? They are all used for the betterment of mankind in the great scope of things, but it is entirely possible to accumulate great wealth and not act in accordance with the greater good. Some of these people may have used child labor, and it was quite destructive, right? The coal mines back in the day sent the children in to go test the seams. They had people that sat on the shuttles when they were weaving, and they were children. These children were dismembered at many times. There was great detriment brought about. Some of these magnates were formed off of slavery, the direct stealing of someone else's labor. The outcome of that was our labor laws and our unions and the things which have improved the situation for the workers over the years. But that was a result of these people being blessed by the wrong entities. If you are in accordance with the laws and you are moving in the correct direction with that, wealth will come, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that wealth will be monetary. Again, there are more ways to be wealthy than just to have money. If your goal is to be rich, you are probably doing it wrong, and you need to once again check out the 8 laws of creation to get your intentionality to correct. Understanding these 8 laws of creation is fundamental in creating the harmonic for your life that you actually wish to be in. The power to create depends entirely upon spiritual power. There are 3 steps: idealization, visualization, and materialization. Every captain of industry depends upon this power exclusively. In an article in Everybody's Magazine, Henry Flagler, the Standard Oil multimillionaire, admitted that the secret of his success was his power to see a thing in its completeness and to exploit his labor. And to exploit his labor. And to exploit his labor. That is a thing. The following conversation with the reporter shows his power of idealization, concentration, and visualization, all spiritual powers. Now, idealization is understanding that there is the possibility. Visualization, or conceptualization if you have a fantasia, is the ability to see what might be from that idealization. And materialization is taking the actual steps to create that thing. It does no good to just think about it. It does no good to just pray, fast, and meditate, although those three things are necessary for true success. It is not just enough to do that. You have to invest the energy, right? We talk about this often. You must put energy out in order to have energy returned. It is one of the 8 laws of creation, the law of return. Your alignment is in large part dependent upon what you get back. And so this is a part. Idealization, visualization, materialization, idealization, concentration, and visualization. Those are necessary, but intentions are vitally important. Making sure that you are doing the best for everyone involved is vitally important. You can see the results, right? Some of these people still have money today, and by them I mean their descendants. But they don't bear fruit, right? The fruit that they have is bitterness, resentment, and anger for a large part.
Did you
actually picture to yourself the whole thing? I mean, did you or could you really close your eyes and see the tracks and the trains running and hear the whistles blowing? Did you go as far as that? Yes. How clearly? Very clearly. And once again, I have to point out that that is not necessary, right? Visualization, conceptualization is a thing. It is a part of the process. But it is probably, in my estimation, the least important part. You should be concentrating upon the thing which you wish to come. Try to get it in as intricate of a detail as you can. That is true. But I have manifested outside of the ability to visualize. And so, it's not necessary. You don't have to have it. I hold the concepts.
When I healed my throat, right, I'm having a hard time. We're into the 2nd hour of talking. My voice is quite tired. But when I removed this cyst, I wasn't able to visualize that. That was not a part of it. I held the conception of healing. That was the conception that I had. That was the entirety of it. I moved the energy where it needed to be and visualized healing. I did not visualize taking that particular lump and shrinking it. That didn't happen. I did not think about healing my shoulder. When I healed my shoulder, it was an accident. I was trying to heal other things. Those things are healing, but this healed. This is done. This is still working, right? The lump is gone, but I still have problems with speaking, right? I've been quite open about that. The part that was holding me back was the lump, and it stretched my vocal cords. So talking right here is me strengthening those,
pulling them back tight so that they can make the proper vibrations. That is something that is part of my visualization, conceptualization, right? I'm still holding the energy. I am still healing, but I am taking the steps to help that along. I am pushing myself, right, into the 2nd hour of this. Every day I am doing as much as I possibly can. If I could do 6 hours of talking, y'all would get 6 hours of videos. I can do 2 hours, sometimes 3, once even 4. And so I push myself as hard as I can. By the 2nd hour, it's getting tough, but it's getting better. Every single day I can do a little bit more. It gets a little bit more discernible. It gets a little bit clearer.
I can talk right here a little bit better every day. And this main problem is me projecting.
I am overtaxing it. I am pushing past the natural effect, and I am making it happen. It's still part of visualization, right? Visualization, conceptualization is the same thing to me. You don't have to actually see it, right? That's the point I'm trying to make. You don't have to see it very clearly. You don't. It's not necessary. I am sure it is a useful tool, maybe even needed, but it's not necessary. Don't have to have it. I did the thing without it, right? I've affected change in my life without the ability to visualize anything. Anything that I see when I close my eyes is completely involuntary up until the past few weeks. I am in the process of healing that, and that's getting better too. I can't show you that one. Here, here we have a vision of the law. We see cause and effect. We see that thought necessarily precedes and determines action. If we are wise, we shall come into a realization of the tremendous fact that no arbitrary condition can exist for a moment, and that human experience is the result of an orderly and harmonious sequence. Wait, what? If we are wise, we shall come into a realization of the tremendous fact that no arbitrary condition can exist. That's not true. For a moment. And that human experience is the result of an orderly and harmonious sequence. That's not necessarily true either. Like, he is projecting the best intentions, right? He is trying to convince you that if you hold this firmly, it will be true. And if that was true, we would have a lot more successful people, because a lot of people have read this book. Almost none of them have affected the actual change that they were desiring. The successful businessman is, more often than not, an idealist and is ever striving for higher and higher standards. The subtle forces of thought as they crystallize in our daily moods are what constitute life. Thought is the plastic material with which we build images of our growing conception of life. Use determines its existence. As in all things, our ability to recognize it and use it properly is the necessary condition for attainment. Premature wealth is but the forerunner of humiliation and disaster, because we cannot permanently retain anything which we do not merit or which we have not earned. That is mostly true, right? And once again, I point you back to the magnates and their children. Many of them are still wealthy, right? So they didn't just lose it, but they don't have the gumption to create more, to diversify and do new things. Most of them are better people. They were born into wealth and they had no struggle in their life, and so they operate on a different plane of existence. That plane of existence tends to be more bitter, more self-loathing even. They loathe us, don't get that wrong. They hate us with a passion. We are merely useless eaters to them. But they loathe themselves as well. That is part of this thing. Getting the thing that before you are ready for it really hurts you more than anything. You will use it in the wrong manner. You see that all of the time in the music industry or entertainment in general, right? Somebody gets in a hit movie and they make a lot of money, and then they're strung out on drugs because they had no emotional regulation. They weren't prepared for the wealth. They weren't taking part of the process. It kind of just fortuitously happened. That is premature wealth, not being prepared to actually use that wealth. The conditions with which we meet in the world without correspond to the conditions which we find in the world within. This is brought about by the law of attraction. How then shall we determine what is to enter into the world within? Whatever enters the mind through the senses or the objective mind will impress the mind and results in a mental image, which will become a pattern for the creative energies. These experiences are largely the result of environment, chance, past thinking, and other forms of negative thought, and must be subjected to careful analysis before being entertained. On the other hand, we can form our own mental images through our own interior processes of thought, regardless of the thoughts of others, regardless of exterior conditions, regardless of environment of every kind. It is by the exercise of this power that we can control our own destiny, body, mind, and soul. And yes, right, we have talked about probably sufficiently, but we'll hit it briefly again. That which you focus upon is what you create. If you are focused upon negative thoughts, you are creating negative in your life. And if you are focused upon positive, you are creating positive. That is the law of attraction. You are creating that which you focus upon. You are doing it whether you believe in it or not, whether you understand it or not, whether you know the 8 laws of creation or not. They are still working, whether you have any idea about it. The same way that gravity makes these glasses drop if I open my hand, right? That's working whether I knew what gravity was or not. Gravity existed before Newton attempted to explain it. So, it is with the 8 laws of creation. The law of attraction states that like attracts like. Things of a similar nature tend to cluster. The law of return says that you will receive in return the energy expended amplified by your intentions. That is true whether you believe it or not, whether you understand it or not, and whether you use it or not. So you might as well learn it. You might as well use it. Because when you use it intentionally, you are creating the reality that you wish. It is by the exercise of this power that we take our fate out of the hands of chance and consciously make for ourselves the experiences which we desire. Because when we consciously realize a condition, that condition will eventually manifest in our lives. It is therefore evident that in the last analysis, thinking is the one great cause in life. Therefore, to control thought is to control circumstances, conditions, environment, and destiny. For the most part, once again, there are bottlenecks. There are things outside of your direct control. There are things that will happen whether or not you intend them to. You do get a small measure of control of that, but sometimes they are going to happen regardless. Even if you are focused entirely upon the positive, sometimes negative things will happen. You get to decide your response to that, and in part, that is the point of having them. The form will depend upon the mental image from which it emanates. This will depend upon the depth of the impression, the predominance of the idea, the clarity of the vision, the boldness of the image. The quality depends upon its substance, and this depends upon the material of which the mind is composed. If this material has been woven from thoughts of vigor, strength, courage, determination, the thought will possess these qualities. Like attracts like. And finally, the vitality depends upon the feeling with which the thought is impregnated. If the thought is constructive, it will possess vitality. It will have life. It will grow, develop, expand. It will be creative. It will attract to itself everything necessary for its complete development. We just hit that. If the thought is destructive, it will have within itself the germ of its own dissolution. It will die, but in the process of dying, it will bring sickness, disease, and every other form of discord. This we call evil, and when we bring it upon ourselves, some of us are disposed to attribute our difficulties to a supreme being. But this supreme being is simply mind in equilibrium. We have hit it before, right? And I just hit it again. Things will happen regardless of your intention. Most of the time, almost all of the time, it is your intention creating it. But occasionally, there are bottlenecks. There are lessons that you are here to learn. If you are not learning those lessons, they will repeat. They will get more intense as they repeat. If you are not learning the lessons, they will repeat. It doesn't matter how positive you are. If your lesson is to learn loss, you're going to learn loss. If your lesson is to learn how to accept a disease, that's what's going to be, regardless of your intentions. Most of the time, you have control of that if you take it. Some of the time, you don't. That is an important distinction that you need to hold, because the Supreme Being put you here for a reason. You are here to learn lessons. It is a voluntary incarnation. You agreed to learn lessons, and some of those lessons are tough. Some of them are lost. That is a simple fact. It is one of the 8 laws of creation. It is an immutable fact, whether you believe in it or not. It is neither good nor bad. It simply is. Now, I disagree with that. God is good. Actions can be bad. Results can be bad. The bottlenecks can be seen as bad, but they're normally for your growth and therefore are good. There is good and bad. There is good and evil. Those are things. They are part of the choice. Some people choose evil. That is a truth. Some people choose good. That is also a truth. Make sure that you are choosing. It is not God that is evil, but God is good. There is a difference. Our ability to differentiate it into form is our ability to manifest good or evil. Good and evil, therefore, are not entities. They are simply words which we use to indicate the result of our actions, and these actions are, in turn, predetermined by the character of our thought, mostly. If our thought is constructive and harmonious, we manifest good. If it is destructive and discordant, we manifest evil. That is mostly true. If you desire to visualize a different environment, the process is simply to hold the ideal in mind until your vision has been made real. Yes, conceptualize it. Give no thought to persons, places, or things. These have no place in the absolute. The environment you desire will contain everything necessary. The right persons and the right things will come at the right time and in the right place. That is something that is hard to hold on to right there too. At the right time and at the right place is not necessarily when you think the right time and the right place will be. Sometimes the answer is yes, and that's an easy one to take. Sometimes the answer is no, and that's a little bit harder to take. Sometimes the answer is not yet. Sometimes the thing you want is meant for you, but it's not for right now. It's for later, and you have to learn patience. That is a hard one for people to understand, in the same way that it is hard for them to understand the bottlenecks. I am living my life correctly, to the best of my ability, perfect in all of my ways, and yet this hardship happens? Yes. Talk to Job. It is sometimes not plain how character, ability, attainment, achievement, environment, and destiny can be controlled through the power of visualization, but this is an exact scientific fact. Sorry, I've been trying not to drink, but I gotta do it. You will readily see what we think determines the quality of mind, and that the quality of mind, in turn, determines our ability and mental capacity. And you can readily understand that the improvement in our ability will naturally be followed by increase in attainment and a greater control of circumstances. It will thus be seen that natural laws work in a perfectly natural and harmonious manner. Everything seems to just happen. If you want any evidence of this fact, simply compare results of your efforts in your own life, when your actions were prompted by high ideals, and when you had selfish or ulterior motives in mind. You will need no further evidence. If you wish to bring about the realization of any desire, form a mental picture of success in your mind by consciously visualizing your desire. In this way, you will be compelling success. You will be externalizing it in your life by scientific methods. And once again, focus on the things you want and not on the things you don't. Right? That is what you need. That is what he is enforcing here, what he is trying to reinforce at least. If you focus on that which you want, that is the thing that you are investing your energy in. If you are thinking about the thing that you don't want, that is what you are investing your energy in. And either way, it will come back. If you're investing in what you don't want, you're going to get what you don't want. If you're focusing on what you do want, you will get what you do want. We can only see what already exists in the objective world, but what we visualize already exists in the spiritual world. And this visualization is a substantial token of what will, one day, appear in the objective world, if we are faithful to our ideal. The reason for this is not difficult. Visualization is a form of imagination. This process of thinking forms impressions on the mind, and these impressions, in turn, form concepts and ideals. And they, in turn, are the plans from which the master architect will weave the future. The psychologists have come to the conclusion that there is but one sense, the sense of feeling, and that all other senses are but modifications of this one sense. I can see that, right? When you hear, it is the hairs in there vibrating, that is touch. When you see, it is the photons affecting the cones and things in your eyes, so that is touch. I can see that. This being true, we know why feeling is the very fountainhead of power, why the emotions so easily overcome the intellect, and why we must put feeling into our thought if we wish results. Thought and feeling are the irresistible combination. When I say my affirmations, right, I say I am a healer, I am a teacher, I am a creator, I am a counselor, I am an employer, I am, right? The I ams are part of this. But I say that I am embracing my greater purpose with vigor and enthusiasm, and then I push my enthusiasm into it. We talked about the manifestation process. If you are unfamiliar with that, fall back farther back into this study or the rest of the Infinite Integrations playlist. But that pushing into the divine aura, that is this, right? That is investing the energy of your feeling into the desire of your want. Visualization must, of course, be directed by the will. We are to visualize exactly what we want. We must be careful not to let the imagination run riot. Imagination is a good servant, but a poor master, and unless it is controlled, it may easily lead us into all kinds of speculations and conclusions, which have no basis or foundation of fact whatsoever. Every kind of plausible opinion is liable to be accepted without any analytical examination, and the inevitable result is mental chaos. That is true as well. That is part of keeping your focus on what you want and not what you don't, right? If you are focused in your intention, then you will receive back. 8 laws of creation. We must, therefore, construct only such mental images as are known to be scientifically true. Subject every idea to a searching analysis and accept nothing which is not scientifically exact. When you do this, you will attempt nothing but what you know you can carry out, and success will crown your efforts. This is what businessmen call far-sightedness. It is much the same as insight, and is one of the great secrets of success in all important undertakings. Right? Like, it does no good to try and manifest a dragon, right? They may have existed at some point in our life, but they are not a current part of our life. And so, if it is something that is patently impossible, manifestation is going to do you no good, right? You are not going to pull something from nothing. It does not happen that way. For your next exercise, try to bring yourself to a realization of the important fact that harmony and happiness are states of consciousness and do not depend upon the possession of things. I tell you all of the time, happiness is not a disease. You don't catch it. It is a mental attitude. It is something you choose. It is a target you aim at, but you never actually, you can achieve it. But it is not really something that you can throw something at, or it's not something you can attain. It is something you manifest within yourself. It is an idea, right? It is a state of consciousness. It does not depend upon possessions. That things are effects and come as consequences of correct mental states. That is almost entirely true. So that if we desire material possession of any kind, our chief concern should be to acquire the mental attitude which will bring about the result desired. This mental attitude is brought about by a realization of our spiritual nature and our unity with the universal mind, which is the substance of all things. This realization will bring about everything which is necessary for our complete enjoyment. This is scientific or correct thinking. When we succeed in bringing about this mental attitude, it is comparatively easy to realize our desire as an already accomplished fact. When we can do this, we shall have found the truth, which makes us free from every lack or limitation of any kind. And again, no matter how perfect you are, there will always be some lack. There will always be some limitation. A man might frame and let loose a star to roll in its orbit, and yet not have done so memorable a thing before God as he who lets a golden-orbed thought to roll through generations of time. H.W. Beecher. Part 16, questions.
Upon what does wealth depend?
Upon an understanding of the creative nature of thought.
Upon what does true value consist?
Upon its exchange value.
Upon what does success depend?
Upon spiritual power.
Upon what does this power depend?
Upon use. Use determines its existence.
How may we take our fate out of the hands of chance?
By consciously realizing the conditions which we desire to see manifested in our lives.
What then is the great business in life?
Thinking. Why is this so? Because thought is spiritual and therefore creative. To consciously control thought is therefore to control circumstances, conditions, environment, and destiny.
What is the source of all evil?
Destructive thinking.
What is the source of all good?
Scientific, correct thinking.
What is scientific thinking?
A recognition of the creative nature of spiritual energy and our ability to control it. That is a good one. To every man there openeth a way, and the high soul climbs the highway, and the low soul gropes the low. And in between on the misty flats the rest drift to and fro. But to every man there openeth a highway and a low, and every man decideth the way his soul shall go. And we shall skip the advice because it has been repeating all the way through. On this last note right here, a recognition of creative nature of spiritual energy and our ability to control it. That's going to bring us to the Trinity, and that's going to bring us to the wrap-up. Right? The Trinity is this, right? It is the body, which is the temple of God. It is the created thing by which you navigate 5D space. The soul is the second key of the Trinity. It is the individualized piece of divinity that makes the decisions for the temple. You decide what to do with your body. The part that allows that to happen is the third part of the Trinity, and the third part of the Trinity is the universal mind, God, the Holy Spirit, whatever you feel comfortable calling it, source, right? I'm not a stickler for the name that you give to God. I call it God, but I also say the Holy Spirit because that is an easily identifiable thing for people. Everything is God. Everything. Every atom in existence is a part of God. And you can take a small piece of that creative force that is God and create with it. The process of doing that involves prayer, fasting, and meditation. It is directing the energies through your chakras out into your divine chakra, right? You have 7 internal, 1 external. It is pushing that energy through your stack into the divine in the proper manner, which is manifestation. That is taking control of the electromagnetic foundational principles of life. I can take and manipulate that energy.
That is how I healed my throat. I could probably invest more
into tightening of my vocal cords, right? As opposed to just healing. When I do my healing, it is heal this, right? I move the energy where it needs to go, and then I focus on healing, but not necessarily on the specific result. I didn't focus on removing the cyst in my throat. I focused on heal my throat. And then I took steps, right? Actions. I do vocal therapy almost every single day. We are talking, that is in part vocal therapy. But I didn't focus on take the cyst out of my throat. I could have, and that would have still happened, but it may have taken a little bit too much. It may have left a little bit. It may not have had the result that I wanted. So I focused on healing. I am still doing that with my throat. I am still taking the actions. I am still moving the energy.
And I'm getting better, right? I know you hear this.
And it's weak, it's flappy, it's whatever. But it is infinitely better than it was a year ago. It is infinitely better than it was 2 years ago. It is a process. Manifestation is not immediate. But a key component of it is taking creative control of the spiritual energy and using it, bringing it in the correct manner to the place it needs to be, using that as a healing source. I could focus on tightening my vocal cords. I could hold that ideal and it would probably happen, but it might happen too much. It might happen not quite enough. I focus on the healing. But it is still a direct action to manipulate the energies, right? I pull source from the top and the bottom because there are two sources, and I pull them through my stack to the point where they need to be, in this case, my throat. And I focus on the healing and letting the light overwhelm everything and let it do what it needs to do. So you do get an ability to control it, but it is a limited scope if you are doing it correctly. You only get to hold one point in the manifestation triangle, and the other 2 points allow for the best possible outcome. I'm assuming that because the cyst is gone and my throat is not quite right, that is because my message is not quite right, that I still have work to do. There is still research. There is still action to be taken in order for it to finish the healing.
But it's coming. It's getting better every single day.
And it may not seem that way, but to me, I can see the results.
Being able to say anything here is a blessing.
And so, I'm already over 2 hours of talking today, so it is extremely weak. The fact that I can do that at all is a blessing. Use your blessings. Don't get mad at them. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a somewhat difficult topic. I understand that I hold some unconventional beliefs and I have a tendency to step on toes when I relay those. It is not intentional, but it is something I have to do. I do not apologize for it. I am here to show you, to tell you at least, that I have done these things. I have effected healing in my own life by taking a small measure of control of the Holy Spirit, directing it where it needs to go and allowing it to do what it needs to do, instead of trying to force something that is not quite ready. If you like what I'm doing over here, let me know down below. Give me a like, share, and a sub. Throw me a comment. Let me know if you agree or disagree. If it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. If there is another work that you would like to see me work through in the same manner that we are doing here, leave that in the comments below. I am making a list. And if you really like what I'm doing over here, hit me with that super thanks. Or consider joining the channel with a membership. I don't have any special perks, but that might come if we start getting people. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you were here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pit Steak. Peace.